Welcome to Pocketboard, where industry mentors share their expertise to help you navigate your professional goals. I'm Erika, the founder of Pocketboard, and today I'm sitting down with Karen Laos, an author, keynote speaker, a communication champion, and a Pocketboard mentor who specializes in helping professionals communicate confidently, build executive presence, and get recognized for their impact. Today, we're going to talk all about how to get promoted. Everyone wants to be rewarded. They want increasing challenges in their careers, but actually asking for a promotion is a very strategic effort. Karen is an expert who coaches many people on how to negotiate compensation, promotions, big deals. And today she's going to zoom in on how to get promoted. We're going to cover the mindset for getting promoted, how you go about building a case to get promoted, and then, of course, how to make the ask. And if you stick around till the end, she's going to ask me for a promotion, and you're going to see a real-world example of how to put these principles in action for yourself. I'm going to turn the mic over to you, Karen, to introduce yourself to our audience.
Thank you. Well, I'm super passionate and fired up about this because I remember when I was 6 years old, my dad gave me a few dollars at a flea market, and he said, have fun, but never pay full price. I was 6 years old. A whole new world had been opened to me, and that's when my love for the deal was born. I love the idea of being able to ask for and, more importantly, get what you want. I am on a mission to reach 10 million women in the next 10 years to overcome self-doubt and speak up with confidence and get what they truly deserve in the boardroom and beyond.
It's really cool to hear this very ambitious goal that you have. One of the things that's really cool about your background is you help women at all career stages, from early career to mid-career, manager level, director level, and then all the way to the boardroom. We're very privileged to have you on Pocketboard as one of our mentors and really excited to talk to you today about that really critical point in your career where you want to get promoted.
I want to impart to everybody listening that it's just a few simple tools. Now, when you say just, the tools might be simple, but yes, as you mentioned, Erika, we're going to talk about mindset as well because so much of that is key.
It's funny that you say, I don't want to say just here because I'm an engineer, and one of the things that you learn very early in your career as an engineer is that nothing is easy, nothing is trivial, and there's no such thing as just, because there's always things under the surface as you start to actually design, architect, and build a solution that you never imagined. So it's funny that in your line of work, you're also correcting for this concept of, while the tools are simple, using them well requires expertise.
Practice, feedback, practice, feedback. The cycle continues for all of us.
The way that we started thinking about how we wanted to present this topic was first starting with mindset. So we have a few questions for you around getting into that mindset to get promoted. First question is, what do you see as the biggest reasons that people get skipped over for a promotion?
Well, I'd say one of the biggest things is that we don't ask. It sounds so basic, and yet we don't actually make the ask. We do all these things in our head. Sometimes it's actually the fear of the rejection and how awful it would feel if we got that no. Most of us are conditioned to say, what if I don't? But imagine if we switch that to, what if I do? What are you risking if you don't? Wouldn't you regret it more if you didn't ask? You can ask in a way where you simply say, hey, I want this. What do I need to get there?
What you're effectively saying is the biggest reason that people get skipped over for promotions is that they aren't asking for them.
That's number one. The first question I always ask people is, have you asked? And if you haven't, why not? The other one is a lack of visibility. Perhaps you're not visible. You're not making yourself visible. The first thing you want to think about is networking within your own organization. How many people know you? Do they have any clue that you exist in the first place? More than just your name on some org chart. But you can make it a goal that you're going to connect with one person a week for 20 minutes and just say, hey, I want to build my network, and I'm wondering if we could talk for 20 minutes to get to know each other better. So I think it's really, have you asked, and are you visible?
It sounds like for both of them, it's really a mindset problem. The
Yeah.
first one, the mindset is, this is going to come to me and I don't need to ask for it. The blocker for the second one, mindset-wise, seems to be that you assume that everyone knows what you're working on and what you do and the impact that you have.
I want to share a story. I was coaching a woman, engineer, senior director, been at the company for many years, but wanted to do something different. Her boss was totally on board. That's amazing. We don't always get a supportive boss. The potential hiring manager, when she was asked, she said, well, she never speaks up at meetings and she never turns on her camera. So I have no way to assess how she might even fit in this role. A lot of times we think it's no big deal. I'll just keep my camera off, or, everybody else has said stuff already in the meeting. I don't have any new ideas. But this is where we have to actively practice with the mindset component. Speak up, saying something will help people to get to know who you are. And then, of course, if you've got good ideas, even better.
Clearly, there's a little bit of a visibility problem here. I'm imagining people listening to this, especially people that are no video people. I mean, we're literally on a podcast right now, right? So we're not on video. Oh, the hypocrisy. I come from the engineering world, and I do believe there's a lot of psychological safety in being able to just not feel like you're being watched. I could imagine that senior director kind of pushing back and saying, I don't agree with that tactic. Are there other tactics that you would share with people who might say, that's too big of a step for me? Are there other tactics to kind of overcome that self-doubt, create that visibility for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. It's knowing your audience. Think about who could you email with something that would add value. That could be an easier in potentially. So when you show that you care, that in and of itself is a gesture. You could then ask, would you have time for a conversation? Or come up with 3 questions that you want them to answer. Make it easy for people. It reminds me of when I was an HR manager. I worked for a pretty prominent intercultural training company. I got a lot of Stanford grads that wanted to work for us. A lot of people would come to me as the HR person and they would highlight that they would love to do anything. And they would put it on me to figure out what job would work for them. Tell me what you want. And that simple question is what I would invite everybody to think about. What are you asking of people? So if you are going to reach out with an email or ask somebody to have a conversation, tell them what the point is. 98% of all people are willing to help if you just ask.
So I feel like we're covering a lot of tactics that help people that are on maybe the extroverted side. My inner introvert is like, okay, we need some more tactics here because these are freaking me out. Are there maybe some self-work activities that you would recommend, or even working with people that know you well?
I'm so glad we have an introvert activist here. One of my favorite exercises is to ask 5 people that know you well to give you 5 positive qualities or attributes about yourself. That can build confidence. It can give themes. I've done it with my clients, and the answers back can help you to see, oh, this is how I'm seen. The second one, it comes from a dear friend of mine named Rachel Grant, and she is a coach. This is not something I'm suggesting you do in a group. You could do it on your own. She had us say our strongest message of self-doubt. Things like, I'm not good enough. Who am I to be asking for this promotion? Same words, but we're going to sing it like a Broadway musical. Imagine saying, like, who am I to be getting this promotion? It has a totally different feel to it. From a neuroscience perspective, it actually changes the neural pathways in your brain so that you kind of trick yourself. It's the same words, but suddenly they sound a little bit ridiculous. It's not acknowledging those, but it's simply trying them on in a different way that can switch that brain to help you go, oh, wow, maybe it doesn't have to be as heavy as it feels. And maybe it's not even true. That's a story that I might be making up in my head. So that's another one that I really love. So you can do that on your own.
Who am I to do a podcast?
Woo, there we go.
I think it works. I suddenly feel more comfortable sitting here doing a podcast. So there's just the levity of the situation, right? Like, yes. Of course I have fears about whether I'm a good podcaster or I'm a good podcast host, but saying it that way, it just reminds you that life is so much bigger than whether I'm a good podcast host or not. The brain-body message association is pretty well studied. There is something really powerful about reclaiming something that you've historically thought of as negative, and the idea of saying a message that you've been telling to yourself for some time and in a way that you naturally associate positive feelings with, like hitting that high note.
Right. It's not about it being a musical. The point is you're saying it in a different way. Exactly what you said, Erika. It's that levity that shifts it.
I want to focus on one other mentality shift that we haven't talked about. We really focus on visibility creation, the imposter syndrome side, the how to overcome self-doubt in setting your mindset for a promotion. But there's this whole other class of people that we haven't talked about. And these are the people that really feel like they deserve a promotion. And rather than feeling fearful, they actually feel frustrated, impatient, and annoyed. What are some of the tactics that you give them to reset their mindset to be ready for a promotion?
I do recognize the frustration where you feel like I've been doing all these amazing things. Why is this not happening for me? Focus on the benefits to your audience. Why would they want to give you a promotion? What is the value that you bring? And does it actually match what the company needs? Rather than you just want to get promoted because you want a better job title or you want more money. When you think about yourself, what is it that you know you're really good at, and does it actually match?
So it sounds like what you're saying is really recognize that you're not the center of anyone else's universe except you. And you need to really think about your manager, the other stakeholders who would be affecting whether you get promoted or not, and understand what is the value that I'm bringing to them today. And maybe more importantly, what is the pitch for the value proposition I'm going to bring to them in this elevated role?
I'll share how I did it. I was head of HR for the company, but there wasn't anybody else but me. I realized I want to do corporate training and I want to focus on people development. Because I was the only person, most of my time in HR at that company was spent on comp and benefits and the things related to people's paychecks, which obviously are really important. Because we never had another person, I had to come up with a compelling case to propose to my boss that I wanted to be a trainer and focus on corporate training. There might be times, for those of you that are listening, where you have to make up something that didn't actually exist before. So what would this bring to the company? Why would they want to have me as that role and basically have to then hire a whole other HR person when historically they never had more than one person in that role anyway? So I had to make a really compelling case to convince them or influence them to hire both me and someone else. So I made a list of all the reasons why, and I had to think, what does my boss care about? Well, she's head of finance, she's a CFO, so she cares about money. She cares about making sure that it's actually adding value. I spent a lot of time thinking about why she would care, what value add it would have, and even some money savings in the end that would help with retention. So I went through a list of items and I pitched it to her and she said yes. But there was a caveat that we all need to be prepared for, because there's often a price for things. If you want more of this, then you're going to have to compromise with something else. So she flat out said to me, if we need to lay someone off in HR, it's going to be you. If you want this new role, just know that is not the essential part of HR. It's wonderful, but it's not what's getting people paid. I'm so happy that she was that candid with me, because it made me face the reality that that could happen.
We've really framed this podcast around how to get promoted, this idea of getting more responsibilities, getting paid more. What you just described was a situation where you were trying to earn the right to focus on the part of your job you cared the most about. There are a lot of people that would happily take less pay to be able to work on the section of their job that they most love. And I want to acknowledge that all of the tactics that we're sharing today are tactics that work, whether you're looking for a lateral, for more of a focused role, for acknowledgement for the role that you're already playing, or for the more traditional sense of a promotion to a larger scoped role with more compensation.
My old boss used to say, make it impossible for me to say no. And I love that invitation, because her point was, make a case, make a business case, and convince me.
The way you're describing understanding the other person's goals, in the software building world, one of the things that we think about from a product perspective is, what's the user story? And I think we can use that same concept here as well. And so when you were talking about your boss being the CFO, her user story is, I need to control and understand the cost for the company, and I need to increase profitability along the way. You made an argument that spoke to that user story. So I just love the intersectionality of your background in HR and mapping that to people that don't see themselves in roles where they have to make a lot of business cases. Okay, so we've talked about what are the common reasons that people aren't getting promoted. We've talked about how people can get their mindset right, get in the right headspace for a promotion, which is really about thinking about, what do I want? What are the key stakeholders of making this promotion decision need? What is their user story? And then what does the business need? And how do I make this case, not based on what I deserve or what I've earned so far, but the value proposition I'm going to bring to those people and to the business long term. So now we've got our mindset right. Now let's talk about how you actually build that case for promotion.
Let's think about it as a roadmap. So the first thing that I want to say, you never want to surprise your boss just all of a sudden like, hey, I want to get promoted. If you start planting seeds, it's going to be a heck of a lot easier to make this an easy yes for your boss. My old boss used to say, make it impossible for me to say no. But let's talk first about something that I find very powerful to do. And that is to start making a list of your accomplishments as they go. If your boss doesn't bring it up, you need to say, hey, I want to share my accomplishments with you over the past week, over the past month. When you start documenting these things, then by the time you want to ask for a promotion, you've got them all written down. But more importantly, you have already shared those wins with your boss. Hey, by the way, boss, I don't know if you realize this, but I actually saved the company X amount of dollars. Hey, I want to share a process that I created. Here's how it's going to save us time and hopefully money in the end. You're technically advocating for yourself all along the way. They kind of start going, wow, she's pretty good at this job here.
I think there's a couple of things here I want to react to. One is just the psychology of optimism. One of the things that is really well documented is that people like positive people. They want them around more. They're more likely to promote them. They're more likely to pick them for teams. And so when you talk about using the time that you have scheduled with your manager to celebrate your wins and even using that language, you're inviting them into your optimism. So I just want to acknowledge that there's a psychology component here that's well studied that underlies this advice that you're giving. And then the second thing I want to just react to is, okay, so now we're at this place where we've started using this regular cadence of check-ins with our manager to start building this shared sense of success and accomplishment. How do you go from starting to share these wins to getting to that ask?
A lot of people look at whether it's a negotiation or asking for promotion as an us-them thing, like we have two sides. When if we look at it as we are building a relationship that can be a win-win, that can shift not only our mindset, but it can shift how we show up in the conversation. So for example, it might be something like you say to your boss, hey, I really want to collaborate with you about working together to get me promoted in the next year. Do you think that's realistic? And can we talk about that? I want to share a story that I think will illustrate ways to do things and not to do things. And this is my story. So I had been in a role for quite some time, and the company was a pretty flat organization. I was asked by my boss to be on the leadership team, and I was super excited about that. But there was nothing discussed about title. I had been a senior manager for many years. I happened to notice that everybody else in that group was a director or above. Most of them were vice presidents. So I mentioned to her, what does this mean for my title? You know, everybody else is director or above. And she goes, oh, yeah, we'll have to look at that. This was not a formal meeting. I mentioned it to her once after we were all standing up and leaving the room. 6 months later, after I'm on the leadership team, I was thinking nothing has been said here. This is weird. Maybe I should approach the COO. And he kind of gave me some sort of story that I remember was not very helpful. Just, well, there's a lot of things to consider with the title change and blah, blah, blah. And so at my review, I am literally thinking 9 months later that I am going to get a promotion at this review. My boss and I had a great relationship, and she could tell something was off. And she goes, what's going on? It sounds like something's wrong. And I said, well, I thought I was going to be promoted. And she goes, what? She didn't even remember that conversation. We both laughed about it. And I said, okay, I want a do-over. If we could go back 9 months, I would have said to you, everybody in there is director or above, and I want that too. I've been a senior manager for several years now, and I want to know what it's going to take to get me there. I want to come up with a plan. Would you be willing to do that with me? We set up another meeting, and then I got on the path because I asked, and I said, I want to make a plan. Can we do that together? You got to ask, and you got to be direct. It's the ask, and then it's also, what are all of the things that person might say back to you that maybe you wouldn't have thought of. So get somebody in your life that's willing to say, well, what about this? Or how about this? Or what if this? What if that? The more prepared that we can be with all of these potential objections, the better off we're going to be when we actually have to get into the actual ask.
How much time do you recommend generally between someone resetting their mindset, starting this campaign of optimism with their manager, and actually making the ask? Like, what is a typical time spread there?
Yeah, you can just ask. You can just go for it. If you've been doing a really good job, you can bring it to your boss.
I think it's really interesting to hear you talk about this need to really ask directly and also not see it as an us versus them, but see it as an opportunity to collaborate. And if you've already laid this campaign of optimism with your manager and you have this long-standing set of wins in the past, it feels like you've really primed the pump for that kind of conversation with the manager to say, I really want to be here. I think that I can add this kind of value to the organization. I have already proven a long track record of success here. Can we collaborate to make this happen? It seems like a really powerful way of asking the question. And I remember earlier, you gave me this quote from one of your former managers that said, make it impossible for me to say no. So I want to ask you a question about that. How does one ask directly, ask collaboratively, and make it impossible for them to say no?
That boss's comment was based on people coming to her in the past in a passive way, kind of complaining like, I want to do more. I want this. I want that. And she would say, great, make a case. Don't put that on me. There's this thing in psychology called the rescue wish. We all want to be rescued. We have this wish. Oh, maybe they'll see me and they'll rescue me. Nobody's going to rescue you. You have to rescue yourself. It's the same way that I felt when I was an HR manager and those Stanford grads would come and say, well, what do you think I could do? I'll do anything. It's not helpful. We have to take ownership of what we want and a plan to get there. The first step is to create a plan. Tell them, here are the milestones that I see. Even if they say they're not willing to collaborate, say, I have a plan that I'd like your sign off on, but I need your help.
There's this very common thread here, which is that a lot of this is in the hands of the person hoping to progress in their career, getting their mindset right, getting to a place where they're seeing everyone around them as a stakeholder in their career and also understanding that they're not the center of everyone's world, and asking for something in a way that makes it very difficult to say no because you're aligning your interests with their needs and interests. I think this concept is really very evergreen in terms of negotiating for anything, in terms of getting anything that you want. All right, so we're going to walk through a role-playing scenario where I, Erika, am going to be Karen's boss and Karen is going to be my employee. None of this has been scripted, so we're going to be playing this ad hoc, and both Karen and I are going to try our best to create a representative scenario of what actually would happen in the workplace if an employee and a manager were having this conversation. And we're going to follow this story for a few months so you can kind of see the planting of the seeds, the watering of the seeds, the seedlings, the sproutlings that are coming up, and then the end result. The hope here is that we can really illuminate this framework for you and you can kind of get a sense of specific things you could say or do in your own situation so that you can set yourself up strategically for making a very strong and successful case for your promotion. Today is a one-on-one between Erika, the boss, and Karen, the employee. And first we're going to introduce ourselves and then we're going to start in the last 15 minutes of our regularly scheduled one-on-one.
So I am the employee and I am an HR manager at a tech company. I've been in my role about 2 years and I was hired in as an HR manager and I absolutely love the company, but I want to get more responsibilities and I'm actually willing to leave the company if there isn't a clear path for career growth. In this conversation, which is a standard one-on-one, I want to discuss my ambitions and the path to growth and ultimately find out if there is any growth opportunities.
I'm Karen's boss, and I've only been working with Karen for less than a year, actually. While she's been at the company for 2 years, I've only been her manager for less than 1 year. The company is growing very quickly, and one of the things that I'm thinking about right now is how am I going to structure my team in the future, given that we will probably at least double in the next 12 to 15 months. I was planning to have a career conversation with Karen after our next performance review when I had a little bit more time to think about the team structure and frankly, get more context on what she was doing before she came onto my team. And I'm really not expecting this one-on-one to turn into a career conversation. All right. So anything else that you want to talk about? We've got about 15 minutes left in this one-on-one.
Yeah, thank you for asking. You know that I love working here and I love having you as my boss. And I'm so glad that you joined about a year ago now or something. And I just feel like we have a great relationship. And I wondered if we could spend a little bit of time today talking about career growth and possibilities for me. Would that be something we could discuss?
Yes. And gosh, I thought it's been a lot less than a year. It's kind of shocking to me that we've been working together for a year, I guess you're saying. Yeah, I would love to talk more about your career. I do think that 15 minutes is not enough time to do it the service that it deserves. And I want to make sure that we have enough time to have a meaningful conversation about your career. I'm open to using the last 15 minutes that we have today to kind of kicking off that conversation. And I'm curious really what you mean by possibilities, and maybe you can dive into more detail there.
Of course. Yeah. So what I want to share with you is well, first of all, I'm so appreciative that you have celebrated the wins that I have brought to the table every time that we've met, because it's so important to me and I just think in general, we as people don't celebrate enough. So I'm very grateful for that. And I know that you have been very good at acknowledging those things. And ultimately, I'm up for more responsibility, and I really want to grow in this role to also support you and the rest of the company and add value. I also want to have my own fulfillment and hope that I can continue to do a really good job for you. So I'm just going to hit you with the bottom line, because I ultimately would love to be, I've been an HR manager for a couple of years. I would like to move to a senior director role. And that is my ultimate goal. So you know that I'm highly motivated. And there's a couple of things specifically that I see as opportunities. So when I say possibilities, what I don't know is, from your seat, what is actually possible. So I don't even know if that is a realistic goal here at this company, if that's something that could be a path that we could create. But I've actually created a roadmap to make it as easy as possible for you, so this can be a no-brainer when the time comes. I'm not expecting this to happen tomorrow. I totally get that I need to earn this, but I also hope that what you've seen in the last 2 years has added value, and that I would love to get your support in a way that we could work together for this. So I'm going to stop there. I know I saw your facial expression and you looked a little surprised when I said senior director. So hit me with your thoughts.
Well, first of all, I appreciate how much thought you've put into this. And I do recognize that you've been at the company a lot longer than we've had the opportunity to work together. It's been really helpful that every time we do have a one-on-one, you bring some wins and you share the context with me of some of the seeds that you laid earlier before I was here, and kind of seeing those outcomes and the impact to the company has been really helpful. So I do feel like I have a sense of some of the accomplishments from the last couple of years, but I do often forget that you've been here for quite a long time. And I do appreciate that you've been in the same role for this 2-year period that you've been working at the company. You did sense a bit of surprise when you mentioned senior director, the way that our career ladders work here. HR manager is usually followed by a senior HR manager, which is followed by a director, which is followed by a senior director. And so from the role that you're in today, which we're going to have performance reviews coming up, and in that conversation, we'll talk a lot about how well you're meeting the expectations or exceeding the expectations for the role. So in order to move up to senior directors is a couple of different promotions, and it's quite a large span of growth from here to there. I love that you've already thought about building out this roadmap, and I would really like to sit down and talk through it with you. I do think that it's going to require more than the last couple of minutes that we have here.
Sure.
So if you want me to look at it asynchronously, feel free to send it. If you want to walk me through it, we don't have to wait until our next one-on-one. Let's go ahead and have that conversation as soon as possible, because I would love to just make sure we're calibrating, we're on the same page, and that your expectations around what it takes to get from here to there is in line with mine. And I do want to share with you something though. I have been here, I guess now a year, and I am thinking a lot about how we're going to grow this team. As you have experienced in your time working with me, we've already grown the team a little bit. We have a lot more growth to go. The company is doing very well. We're growing extremely rapidly. We've got a lot of new team members. And in HR, what that means is we need to grow our services. We need to grow the depth of our function. And so one of the things that I'm thinking about is how we're going to grow our team. So one of the questions that you asked, or implicit to one of your questions, is what kind of growth opportunities are there for me at this company? And so what I want to talk about with you, I'm still working through what our team is going to look like in the future, but I can tell you it is going to grow, and there are going to be career opportunities for people on the team and maybe external people for roles that we don't have the talent for internally. What I want us to get on the same page about is on what time scale you will be able to grow into the responsibilities that are needed for the future of the org. So let's keep looking at this. Let's keep talking about it. I'm really excited to hear that you love the company. You love our team. You've obviously been doing really well, but let's schedule some follow-up time to actually walk through your roadmap. And I will disclose to you that it's going to be a few months before I'm ready to come back with, what our team is going to look like, and then figure out how that fits with your roadmap and where you're at.
Sure. Well, and I also want to say I don't want to get super fixated on a title. I know that was a stretch to ask, but I do want you to know that I have big goals and big dreams. I'm not expecting that that's going to be handed to me overnight, but I do want you to know how I see the potential roadmap and the milestones happening to get me there. And hopefully we'll be able to continue working together through that time that I see in my future. But definitely wanted to make that known that my main goal is to have more responsibilities and be in a leadership capacity beyond a manager. So I wanted to say that so that you knew I don't expect to just jump, from here to there. And the truth is I didn't know all of the back end that you just mentioned about how we move from one thing to the next. So I appreciate you enlightening me to that as the reality of the organization. And I also don't want to be limited as well. If there are places that I could have more leadership and show more responsibility outside of just the title. So know that I'm open and would love to continue to collaborate. And I thank you so much, by the way. I appreciate all of your support. It means the world.
Okay, great. I have to run. Really appreciate you bringing this up. Put some time on my calendar in the next couple of days for us to go through the roadmap, and we'll chat then.
Sounds good.
2 days later, we are sitting in a conference room, and Karen is going to present to Erika her roadmap for getting from HR manager to senior director. Karen, it's so nice to see you again. Thanks for setting up this time for us to chat about your career roadmap.
I'm so grateful that we could sit down and do this. First of all, when we met last, the career ladder conversation, just what the progression is and the all of that was super helpful to me because I really hadn't known that in advance. So I was just going off of what I thought made sense. And what was fascinating is that when I actually looked at the responsibilities of the next step up to senior HR manager, was that I'm actually doing a lot of those things right now. It's just evolved that way. So I wanted to mention that and see if you agree.
Let's talk through it together a little bit more.
All right. One of the things that I have been doing that is technically not on my job description now as an HR manager is mentoring others. I have a lot of people that come to me with specific questions, and I think in part they feel comfortable talking with me, but also I happen to know the answers. So it works out really well. And as you know, I don't manage a team yet, but in mentoring people, I feel like that would be such an easy progression to that next step. So going from having 0 direct reports to 5 direct reports to me would be very reasonable to do because I'm already mentoring a group like that.
You mentioned there were things about the senior manager position that you were already doing. Maybe we could talk about one of those first.
Yeah. So I'm actually helping with hiring. So that's something that's specific to the senior role. And I have formally not been talking about this, but again, I can't not help. It's in my nature to do that. And so the other person that's managing that right now is struggling, frankly, not because of lack of ability, but because we're growing so fast. So I've actually been sifting through resumes and highlighting certain things around that are things that I would be doing anyway in that senior role.
I didn't realize how much you were helping with hiring on the team. Obviously, we have been hiring a lot. We've added multiple people to the team in the last couple of quarters. And I have an idea. Our other manager is a little overwhelmed because of the number of new reports that he has. What would you think about shadow managing with him and sharing some of the load of managing his team? It is a bit unique that you don't have any direct reports as an HR manager. So what would you think about kind of helping him co-manage his team for the next couple of months?
I would love that. I would love to talk about some type of compensation around that, if you think that that's realistic. Because if I'm going to add a more formal role to my job, I would love to revisit that. Would that work for you?
That is an interesting question. I think it's a fair question. What I'm trying to understand here is what your management style would be. To take you from 0 to 5 direct reports is a significant potential risk from a talent perspective, because while you have been mentoring people, as I'm sure you understand, managing people can be a lot more complex. And so I see this as an opportunity for you to actually take on some real management responsibilities, including performance reviews, including one-on-ones, where we can actually get a sense of how comfortable that is for you, to see if going from 0 to 5 is a real possibility. Because as I shared with you, we have a large hiring plan and we will need another manager in the org, potentially a senior manager in the org in a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah, well, what I was going to say is that I don't know if you know this, but I volunteer at this organization outside of work, and I actually manage people there, and I have responsibilities. Even though it's a volunteer role, I'm actually managing people in those roles. And in addition to that, I am taking management courses just to better myself. What I would ask is a potential reconsider on that. I love the idea of trying it out, but I also want to prove to you that I know that I can do it. And I'd rather see if we can work something out to say, hey, maybe it's not an immediate salary shift, but it's like a bonus for, okay, so assuming that I do a good job for that first month, that we could work out a bonus for that and talk about that.
How would you define good job in that 1 month period?
And I have all of those here on the roadmap that I can show you as well.
Okay, perfect. So it sounds like you're excited about the opportunity to potentially co-lead our growing team. I see some risks because I personally have not seen you manage people at this company, and I want to make sure that we're setting you and the team up for success. But you have some hesitation around taking on additional responsibilities without compensation for those responsibilities. So I think that something that might work here is setting a checkpoint in maybe just a month. It's a short period of time where you're co-leading the team. Let's set some success metrics. Sounds like you've got some ideas. And then let's check in a month and see how we're doing against those success metrics. And frankly, how you're feeling about managing people in the org.
That would be great. Thank you.
1 month later, we're having our check-in conversation. Hey, Karen, it's so nice to see you. I'm really excited to dive into how this 1 month management experiment has been going. As we agreed to, I took the liberty of gathering a little bit of anecdotal data from the team members that you're co-managing, as well as from your co-manager. And so far, it sounds like you've really empowered the team members. They are excited to have the additional management bandwidth in particular. Sounds like it's been mostly smooth sailing. I did look and see if there were any challenges that you had faced, and it sounds like, everything's been pretty smooth sailing. Everyone's kind of still ramping up. They haven't really hit any bumps along the road. And the feedback from your co-manager is that he, would be very happy to have you in a more permanent co-managing position, that he's feeling really confident about your abilities. He likes working with you. So I'm really happy to hear that.
Thank you. Well, I feel the same way. And I also have done my own research too, and chatting with people and the like. And it's been really great and empowering for me to hear that I am being of service and to add value. I actually took it upon myself to poll a few people and ask, what are 1 or 2 things that I'm doing well? What are 1 or 2 areas where I could improve? And And I know it's a short amount of time, but I had some great compliments, and that's wonderful. But of course, I always want to look at, well, what could I do better? I need to get better at reporting the data more consistently. And so that's one of the things that I need to work on with the continuation of this role. The other thing that I brought to the table that I thought would be helpful for you to see, just to further add some research to what we're talking about, because I know and I want to acknowledge that you had some concerns, and I totally get that you want to make sure that not only is the company set up for success, but I am as well. In this volunteer role that I play, I actually manage a small team of people and I report to somebody there. And over the past year that I've been doing this, I've gotten some really wonderful compliments. So I brought some of that with me today, especially because you've mentioned a couple of times that, I haven't run into any perhaps bumps or conflicts. I have over there. So it's important to me that you know how I've handled those. So I want to show you, because I have this in writing from the manager there that I report to, and how I've handled the situations in conflict. That's one of the areas where she said I would do a really good job in particular, is that I look at the issue and the problem, not personalizing. So that's one of my success stories, and I've got a few more here to show you.
I think it's incredible that you've taken the proactive approach to volunteering in a management role at this organization. I'm really excited to read these. It's really great backup data to support the other arguments that I'm hearing from within the company. Of course, I shared this with you in our initial conversation. Those types of organizations are really different from ours, and we want to make sure that you're going to thrive and your team is going to thrive here.
I do think that there's a lot of crossover, and most of the time at most organizations, in my studies and in the experience that I have, the problems generally don't come from systems or process. They're usually people problems, and I feel very equipped to handle those. I really feel very excited to play a good role and a powerful one in the company. So I want to ask, is this something that I can continue? Or is there anything else that you need to know that would help?
I think that it's really important to me to see managers go through more difficult situations, whether that's employees that are struggling, performance issues, PIPs, compensation discussions, a performance cycle. As you know, our performance cycle is coming up very soon. So I think these are all really good leading indicators. I'm really impressed with how you've stepped up to this. And I think it is a lot of this, training that you've cultivated for yourself, learning and training outside of the company to become comfortable as a manager. So I'm feeling really confident. I will tell you, my plan for the org is shaping up, and we are going to have a senior manager role opening up. And I would be so excited to consider you for the role. However, I do need to see you actually weathering some storms and seeing more challenging management scenarios. So what I'd like to propose is that we check in again in one more month. I hope that in that time, because we've got the performance reviews, I think that we have some people on the team that may be struggling and may need some more management assistance. This will give you an opportunity to both show that you're able to weather those and able to get people back on track, but also to see some of the harder parts of the role and see if you would like to continue with your path towards this senior management role. How does that sound to you?
That sounds fair. And I want to make my intentions really clear that I want the job. So I will do whatever it takes to get there. And I recognize that you need to see more.
1 month later. Karen, it's so good to see you. We've just gotten through performance reviews. Your team did pretty well. You did have one underperformer, and I see that you have put that person on a plan to get them back on track. And despite having a difficult performance conversation, that employee has very confidently asserted his excitement to continue working with you, your investment in him and his success. And of course, I hope that you'll support that person, but also keep the needs of the company in mind and ensure that you're making the most balanced decisions. But I'm not here to talk about your experiment, because I actually am here to congratulate you. I would like to formally offer you the role as our senior HR manager. And I'd like to have you start with managing 2 team members, including the one that is struggling right now that you've built such a strong relationship with. And I'm really excited for you. I am really grateful that you flagged this in time as I was thinking about the organization. Your co-manager is very excited to right-size his team and to give you the opportunity to start managing. And then, of course, there will be opportunities for you to continue to grow your team as we continue to grow.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited. Yay!
So hopefully that role play was helpful for you. You could see that it was a very real scenario. Both Karen and I were acting off the cuff and reacting to each other's specific choices of words, the approach, actually bringing in data from 2 conversations ago and this conversation. And that is the kind of plan and emotional intelligence that we hope that you can bring into your process. Hope that this framework has been helpful for you. We're going to add some links at the bottom of the podcast on our podcast page so that you can find Karen on Pocketboard if you'd like to book her as a mentor to help you advocate for your next promotion. Additionally, some links to Karen's website and some of the references that we talked about. Thanks everyone for joining, and I hope that you've learned a lot today that can help you position yourself in terms of your mindset, in terms of your strategy, and in terms of your promotion ask to have a successful and thriving career. If you found this video helpful, please give us a like. Use the comment section to share a little bit more about your experience. You can help someone else out. And also, if you have some questions for us, we respond to every comment. If you want me or other Pocketboard mentors to make other helpful videos, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Ring the bell so that you always know as soon as we drop a new video.